There we go.
All right, we are in a hangout. I'm Kristen Whiteman.
I'm Katrina Jacobs.
I'm Megan Hill.
All right. And this week we are talking about getting involved. And so we were supposed to uh, meet with an organization and interview somebody from an organization, and now we're going to talk about it. And so I think, we should just each take turns and talk about who we visited? Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can go first. I'll go first so that I can focus more on taking notes after. So I have, since we moved here to Salt Lake, I've been not directly involved with the YWCA, which is, what does that even stand for? It's a women and children's shelter. And so the YWCA is in our ward boundaries, and I'm in the primary presidency, and so the majority of the children in our primary live at the YWCA, and I teach 4 women at the YWCA. So I've had a lot of involvement with people living there, and I thought it would be a great organization to research. So I called, and I'm not sure I talked to the best person to have an interview for these questions, because the first question is, what led you to get involved with the YWCA in the first place? And she didn't really know. It sounded like she just kind of stumbled upon it and needed a job type of thing. She said it was kind of chance, the luck of the draw. And so at first I was like, okay, maybe she's not going to be as passionate about this as I was hoping she would be. But as I talked to her more, I could tell that she did have a love for the organization, and she really did feel like it was beneficial. So when I asked her what she thought the most prevalent problems for families in our community, in the Salt Lake community, are, and she said with the YWCA, the number one issue that they see is with domestic violence. And a lot of times it's domestic violence, so it's a husband who is abusing a wife, and sometimes it's the wife and the children, which is really, really sad. And with that, she said, by being involved with other organizations throughout the community, she's also seen that another big problem in our community, especially the area that we live in, is financial issues. Just people who don't know how to use their resources wisely, and don't know how to to have resumes and things like that will really help them to get jobs to support their families. And a lot of times it's those financial issues that lead to domestic violence. And so she talked about those as some of the most prevalent problems for families in our area in Salt Lake. When I asked her how the YWCA helps children and families locally, she said, well, there's a million ways that it helps. And I think, yeah, that's exaggerated, but the YWCA does so much to help women and children who are struggling, recovering from instances of domestic violence, trying to escape an abuser, or helping them with transitional housing, and helping them to get back into the community, and to find housing that they can afford as single moms. They offer shelters, so they have an emergency shelter they call it the crisis center. So women can come and can stay there. Not all the women who come and stay there end up going into the transitional housing, but there is transitional housing for women. They offer daycare, after school programs, food, clothing, groups for the women to meet or the children to meet. And they also have a family justice center that they can send the women to for legal help and things like that. And so there's a lot of different things that the YWCA offers to help children and women and their families in our local area. The YWCA is only in Salt Lake, which I didn't know. I thought it was kind of like the YMCA, sort of, where it was just all over the place. But the YWCA is only located in Salt Lake. So I thought that was something that was kind of special to Salt Lake. When I asked her if she felt like if she felt like the YWCA and their organization was child or family focused, like if the organization strives to strengthen the family or to step in and help when families are failing. She says they try to be preventative in any way that they can, but the people that they're dealing with are people who have already had problems and issues with their families, quote, failing, and so they deal mostly with stepping in and intervention and things like that, helping women who have experienced domestic violence and helping them to really get back on their feet and offering the support and help that they need. Something that I wanted to ask her is how she felt our community can serve these families. Because for me, being in the primary presidency, we offer things like once a month we do a home evening there at the shelter, and I know our bishop, his heart and soul goes into the women and children that are at the YWCA in our ward, and so we put a lot of focus on that. But I was curious to see what she felt we could do as members of the community, and she said donations. Definitely donating to organizations and being aware of the needs of the people in our community, because that can help us to know what things we can donate and what areas we can step in and help. So clothing donations, monetary donations, and things like that are really beneficial to helping support the YWCA. And then another question that I asked her is how she felt communities can be empowered to meet the needs of families and children. And she said the main thing that she said was giving family the tools that they need to get by. So a lot of these women, they're dealing with a crisis in their lives, and so they need the simple tools to continue to live and to support their children, because a lot of them will not receive support from their ex-spouse, and they're trying to hide from them in a lot of these situations. And so tools as far as helping with the donations and things like that, and then any ways that we can support them by giving them those tools that they need to get by. And she said she was talking about how a lot of these women lack the basic skills that they need to continue to move on with their lives and things like that. And so she said when we meet and come in contact with these women and learn of their stories, we should give them boosts of confidence and really remind them of their worth as women and as mothers, because they lost a lot of that in the experiences that they've had with the domestic violence and the issues that they had in their marriages and in their families. And so really helping them understand their worth. And I asked her specifically, because this is something that I've wondered a lot, especially being in the primary, is do these women need help and empowerment from other women? Because do they fear men? Questions like that. And she said she really feels like the empowerment can come from anybody that cares, man or woman. A lot of them have lost faith in men, but there are still opportunities for men to empower them and to help them feel their worth and to be a support and to really show that they care. And I asked her for advice, what she felt like those of us who are wanting to advocate for children and families can do. And she said look for volunteer opportunities in organizations. She said it's kind of hard to do things on our own as individuals, but if we seek out organizations that have already been developed or volunteer opportunities that are available, we can really get our foot in the door and find out ways that we can really make a difference and know what areas the family and children need to be advocated for. So that was my experience with it.
That was really good.
Thanks.
That was really in depth. You learned a lot.
I did. I felt like at first I was worried that I wasn't going to learn much at all because she's like, well, I just kind of stumbled upon it. It was by that I got involved. And I was like, But I felt like I learned a lot. And I think kind of already being involved in it somewhat helped me to know like what kind of questions to ask. I felt like even though it said we shouldn't ask leading questions, I felt like I kind of had to get more out of her sometimes. So I don't know if that was right or wrong, but I felt like I learned more that way. So for sure.
Awesome. So did you want to volunteer at that organization?
I would like to. So right now I'm like swamped. Don't have any time for much other things, and so I do try and make sure that I'm I'm spending the time with the women that I visit, teach, and helping them as much as I can, and serving in that area. But I would like to eventually to go into to spend more time there, learning more about the YWCA and how it's run, the different advocacy groups that they have that I could be a part of. And I think there's a lot that that we as women can do for women. And I think I didn't realize that as much until I was married and realized how much I really do need women and the support that we can give each other. And so I would love to be able to be there and to be a part of that. And especially with these little children who are so confused right now in their lives and dealing with really hard things, and their moms are struggling to emotionally be able to support them as well. And so I would love to be able to get involved there.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. I guess I'll go next since I might leave before it's over. So I'm not sure if I went in the right direction. Sorry, I just lost something. Okay. So I'm not sure if I went in the right direction with this because I didn't really research a organization, and it, you know, it's not like a women's shelter or a YMCA or anything like that. But I really wanted to look into child life specialists because that's actually what I want to do with this degree, and I think they benefit children and families a ton. So I thought it was a really good opportunity for me to learn more about it. I actually wanted to do my internship there at a local hospital that has child life specialists, but they only take interns from in-state schools, and I'm in North Carolina, and I go to BYU, Idaho, so they wouldn't take me. But this gave me a really good chance to talk to the person that's at the head of it and maybe get my foot in the door and kind of figure out what it's all about. And so I talked to the woman who is at the top. I don't think the tippy top, but she's one of those. And I asked what led you to getting involved in this, and she actually began as a social worker. She worked for a few years as a social worker and said that even though a lot of people find it super rewarding, she didn't find it very rewarding. She says that as a social worker, there's a lot of gray areas about what's okay, what's right, what's wrong, and she wanted to do something where she knew that she was helping. Everything that she was doing was helping. And so a position opened up at Wake Med, the hospital, and she went and started working there, and she loves it because she feels like everything she's doing is benefiting children and families, and there's no more gray areas figuring out if she's doing something wrong or if she should report this. And so I thought that was really interesting. And I asked her about present problems, and she's active in a lot of different organizations as well. Wake Med actually has a program where the child life specialists work really closely with the therapists. And so she's not qualified to be a therapist, but she's trained with them to know what to look for and stuff. So I thought that was interesting. So she's learned a lot about the community and the problems, and she thinks that one of the biggest problems in the community right now for families is the struggle to balance everything. Everything that's being juggled, work, school, kids' schedules, technology. There's so many different things going on, and she actually related that to the hospital and what she sees when do you guys know what child life specialists are? I didn't even explain that. I'm sorry. I should explain that. Okay, so child life specialists are the people who work really closely with the children in the hospitals, and they explain the procedures in the way that children can understand. A lot of times they use dolls to point to what's going to happen to them, and they plan fun activities to get their minds off of cancer and surgeries and different things. So they act as a mentor and a fun person who lifts their moods, things like that. So now it probably makes more sense to you, everything I'm talking about. So she related that struggle to juggle things to the families that she sees in the hospital, because a lot of them are struggling to balance everything that's going on. All of a sudden, these medical bills that they're having to pay, trying to cope with the idea of just their child going through surgery, sometimes a terminal illness that their child has, just trying to cope with all these different problems. And it affects the family's ability to help their children cope, because they're just trying to focus on themselves and calm themselves down and figure it out, that they're not really in a good place to help their children cope, and that's where child life specialists and the therapists come in the hospital. And I asked a little bit more about how they help children and families, and I explained most of that. But one thing she mentioned is how important it is as a child life specialist for her to be really attentive to the family. She's there for the child, but she's also trained to look for certain signs in the family that would tell her that she needs to send them to the hospital therapist. So that's how they work really closely together. And then I asked if it was child or family focused, and she said it's probably a little bit of both, but it's definitely more focused on the child because the children are the priority, but the families definitely benefit big time from it. Just from the therapy that it provides them to know that their kids are being taken care of, just to see their kids smile, that can be really therapeutic and helpful. So it helps the families, but it's really focused on the children, and it's more of a supportive service than a preventive service. And like Katrina, one of the questions I asked was, what can we do? Because obviously I want to be a child life specialist. I couldn't do the internship with them, so I was like, well, what can I do to help and maybe, I don't know, get some practice? And she told me about certain times that they have where they have volunteers come in to help play with the kids and read them books and things like that, so I'm going to look into that. And she also said that kids in the hospital love getting cards, even if they're from strangers. Like, just making cards and sending them in bulk to the children's hospital where they can pass them out, the kids love it. And so I thought that was a really good idea. And then I asked her how prevalent child life specialists are. And she said it's really booming now. And it's something that just became more popular. A lot of hospitals used to not have them or think they were necessary, but now hospitals are really wanting them. So it's a booming field, and hopefully a lot more hospitals are going to have them come in to be able to help the kids and the families. So I thought that was really neat, and I think it's a really awesome way for children and families to be helped, and kind of unconventional, not something you immediately think of. And that's it.
You guys both had really interesting experiences. That's really cool.
Yeah, I really like that. I like learning more about what a child life specialist is. I think no wonder it's booming. I can totally see the value in that, and
Right.
for the children, I think that's great. I think you'll be good at that too. You'll be really good at that.
Thanks. Thank you.
How can they not love you? You have such a great smile, Megan.
Thanks.
I can't think of any questions. That was a great experience.
Thanks. I'm excited to hear yours.
Well, okay. I will start. Katrina, do you have any questions for Megan, though, before we go?
I think the only question that I did have was what a child life specialist was, but you answered it.
I should have explained that at the beginning. As I was talking, I was like, wait, most people don't even know what this is.
So that's good.
Okay. Well, then I will start on mine. I interviewed somebody that I know really well, actually. I interviewed my husband. He works in law enforcement. He's a juvenile detective with the Sheriff's Department, and he works here in our area where we live. And so I asked him what led him to get involved with the juvenile detective, that position, because that's different than what he was doing before. He was an officer, like, on the street, on patrol before. And so many years ago, he put in for a job as a student resource officer, like a campus cop kind of guy. And being around kids, he always wanted to be a teacher, and he ended up being in law enforcement. And so this was like the best of both worlds to him, to be a student resource officer and to be working with kids. It was like, yay, he was really happy. And working in that job as a student resource officer, he had a lot of experience with the kids and figured out that he wanted, hold on, I'm sorry, my phone's ringing. He realized that he wanted to work with the kids in a different way and found out about the juvenile detective position. So that's how he got involved with this program that he's in now. So for him, asking him what the most prevalent problems for families are here in our community, it was really a different answer than what you guys had. He says that he sees that it kind of goes in cycles. They have like problems with thefts and then problems with assaults, drugs, and runaways. And the runaways seem to be pretty consistent. That seems to be a problem that happens a lot. He said that people may not think that runaways are a big problem, but these kids are high risk and they can be victims or suspects. So it kind of goes both ways with the runaways. Always the problems seem to start out small and then there's a ripple effect and pretty soon a minor is involved with more serious crimes. So how does his organization help children and families? Well, so this was the reason why I was interested in talking to my husband, is because he is involved with a diversion program through the Sheriff's Department. So as a juvenile detective, he and his partner run this diversion program. It's a program that's set up for first-time offenders, and depending on what the charge is, the minors can be placed on a diversion contract, and it can keep the minor out of the juvenile justice system. So instead of them being put in juvenile hall, they can be put on a diversion contract through the Sheriff's Department. So he gave me an example. A minor is arrested for a theft from a local store and released back to their parents in lieu of being booked into juvenile hall. The juvenile detective reviews the case, and if the minor qualifies for the program, an appointment is set up with the family and the minor is placed on a diversion contract. The contract includes the kids, the minor who's involved in the crime, and then their parents or family members all agree to what is written down in the contract. And so they cannot break the law. They cannot have any negative contact with law enforcement. They have to maintain passing grades. They have to write an essay discussing their crime and what they could have done differently to stay out of trouble. They have to take an anti-theft class through a community-based organization. They have to take a juvenile law class where they are introduced to how the juvenile justice system works, and then they have to have weekly contact with the juvenile detective for checkups. So the contracts, they can be on this diversion contract between 3 and 6 months, depending on the severity of the crime and also the attitude of the minor. If the minor is not willing to call or not willing to go to the classes or kind of blows it off, then they're going to be on the contract longer. He said that the program has been hugely successful in our community. The number of kids who complete the program and do not reoffend is about 85%. So I asked him whether or not he feels the organization is child or family focused, and he feels like it's both. It focuses on both the child and the family. One of the things that happens when the contract is introduced to the minor and the family is that family problems come to the surface. They oftentimes realize that the minor is lashing out because of stress or difficulties in their family. The Sheriff's Department can then offer counseling for the minor or for the parents or for both or for the whole family, and it can be included in the contract as one of the requirements. So they have to complete the family counseling to be able to get through the diversion. And that, my husband was saying that that's a real bonus, because then the family is kind of forced to work through their problems. It seems that the Sheriff's Department wants to strengthen the family and help families who seem to be failing. So I asked him a couple of questions. One of the questions I asked was, do you find that the lack of income has any influence on whether or not a minor is involved with committing crimes? And he said, no, it doesn't matter. He sees kids from all levels of income have problems, especially with theft. Some kids have mentioned that they love the rush that they get when they steal something. Other kids are doing it because their family is poor and they don't have basic necessities, and so they're stealing food. He said one girl was stealing deodorant and toothpaste, stuff like that, because her family couldn't afford to buy those things and she didn't want to stink at school. Some kids do it to fit in with their friends, so it seems to be like the motivation is different and not necessarily whether or not they're doing it or not. I also asked him, it seems that your organization is really great about rehabilitating minors. Do you have any preventative programs in place? Because they seem to be focusing on helping after something has occurred and not really preventing it. And so they're working on that. The Sheriff's Department wants to, the juvenile detectives especially, have started a summer camp, a special camp during the summer for kids who may or may not be at risk, and they see it as a preventative program to try and help kids have positive experiences with law enforcement, but also they try to have them be, well, that was my next question. Do you have a way of having these kids who've gone through this program, who've been through the diversion program, give back in some way so that they can help other kids who may be having problems? And he said that that's what they're trying to do with this special camp. They like to have kids who've been on a diversion contract be the mentors for their summer camp that they do. And so they get to do team building and peer mentoring and that kind of thing. And also share with these kids who may or may not be having problems what has worked for them to get through difficulties that they've had. So, okay, that's basically it.
That was really interesting.
Different, huh?
Yeah.
I really liked it, though. I haven't ever been in a community where I've known of anything like that. I mean, I'm sure they have diversion programs and things like that, but that is awesome.
Well, I knew that they did it, but I have a rough idea of what my husband does at work, but I was really interested in asking more questions and kind of getting an idea of whether or not what they have to do. And I've worked with, they have an organization that they refer the kids to for counseling and also for these anti-theft classes and things like that. And I volunteer with that organization.
Oh, cool.
Because he worked with them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do an anger management group with them.
Oh.
But they, anyway, I think they have a lot of really great ideas and programs. Hold on just a second. Call me, please. Okay. Sorry, they're all leaving. Anyway, I don't know. Do you guys have any questions?
I don't think so. How like up and coming is this prevention camp for at-risk or not at-risk youth?
So they started the summer camp about 2 years ago. They asked all of the juvenile detectives in San Diego County. So it's probably about, the Sheriff's Department has probably about 15 to 20 juvenile detectives throughout the county. Mm-hmm. And they asked them to get together and come up with a program, and they had they had sponsors, like Verizon is one of their sponsors, and they said, okay, you have like $40,000, here you go, we want you to come up with some kind of camp where you can help kids and try and have it be a preventative program. So they've only been doing it now for 2 years. This summer it'll be the 3rd year. Wow. But I think it's been, one of the things my husband said is it's kind of too soon to tell whether or not it's been successful, but the kids who've been involved in it so far have had really good experiences. And it's been really helpful to have the kids who've been on diversion contracts feel like that they have something to offer other kids.
Yeah.
It's a good I think it's a good program.
Yeah, sounds great.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well,
Okay.
I have to get going.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was hoping I'd make it to the end, but I have to go to work.
I was going to say, Katrina, do you want to give us a rundown, and we'll say bye.
And Megan, if you have to leave, feel free. I won't be offended.
Okay.
Okay. So our summary. So all of us had the opportunity to talk to somebody that kind of influenced us somewhat close to home. And Megan got to talk to a child life specialist because that's something that she's wanting to go into. I talked to a woman who works for the YWCA, which is an organization that's set up here in Salt Lake City for women and children who have experienced domestic violence. And I deal with a lot of those children in primary at church. And Kristen was able to interview her husband, who works as a juvenile detective position. And we all had very different responses to the questions that we had. For the most part, the people that we interviewed got involved in what they were doing because they wanted to make a difference, wanted to either work with kids in a different way, wanted to teach and work with kids, or because they wanted to know that what they were doing was really helping. And our responses to the prevalent problems for families in the communities was very different as well. I think it was a really big reflection of the areas in which they work. For the YWCA, they mentioned that the biggest one that they saw was domestic violence and financial issues. Financial issues oftentimes led to the domestic violence that they had. For Megan, she found out that from the child life specialist that one of the biggest problems that they saw was a struggle to balance work and school and all of the other things in life, and that this lack of balance really affected the parents' ability to help their children to be able to cope with the situations that they were dealing with at the time. And Kristen, when talking to her husband, found something very different than the other two of us discovered. He said that one of the biggest problems is he sees this cycle, problems with theft, assault, and runaways, and talking about how these kids who are runaways are at high risk because they can either be victims or they can be suspects, and that these problems that these kids are getting into start small and they continue to grow and grow into to become a bigger issue, but it always starts with something small. For each of these different programs, there's things that they do to help children and families locally, whether it's through a shelter, through helping children one-on-one in hospitals, through offering transitional housing, or through offering a diversion program. That's one thing that Kristen's husband does is he works in a diversion program that's set up for first-time offenders. And it sounds like a great opportunity for these youth and their family to really decide a way for them to improve their behavior and to be successful in life rather than to continue on the path that they're going on. And something that I thought was really neat was that 85% of the youth that go through this diversion program do not offend again, which is really cool. Sorry, my husband just got back. And then the organization, so with the YWCA, the organization was more child and family focused in the sense that they deal with people who are already having problems, so they're there to step in and to help children and families where the families have already had issues and are failing. For the child life specialist that Megan visited with, they're more focused on the child, but the things that they do definitely help and benefit the families as well. They're more supportive than preventative. And with Kristen, her husband felt like it was both. So the family problems come to surface often when they are going through these things, dealing with the problems that the kids are going through, and through that they're able to offer counseling and intervention for the children and the family. So it's kind of prevention and treatment. We all felt like these organizations are doing great things to benefit families and really to advocate for families and for children. And we all really enjoyed learning from each other and learning when we interviewed the people.
Perfect.
All right.
I think that's great.
Alrighty.
All right. I will post it. Thank you.
Great. We'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.